All right. Glad to be back. Day late. Yesterday, I had a client that was nice enough to invite me out to a Mavs game. So skipped out on the live and went and saw that, which was pretty cool. They ended up it was 120 to 99 Chicago Bulls versus the Mavs. So highly recommend. Fair weather fan. I don't know if people have never really asked me about sports on here. In Dallas, obviously, we've got a lot of teams here. So we got the Stars, Mavs, Boys, the Heat, I think, is our soccer team. Anyway, there's no shortage of sports teams if you did want to really do it up here. Our legal counsel up there in Indianapolis has the Colts and a bunch of people there as well, teams that he follows. I am a fair weather fan. So if teams are doing well, if they are making it to the playoffs, I will watch. But it is not my my cup of tea. I don't spend a bunch of time watching sports or analyzing things or making bets. But I do have friends that do. So it was nice to get out and go see the Mavs game and catch up with them. Other crypto, I don't want to say crypto bros, but crypto people here in Dallas. So as always, fair game. Anything about digital assets, estate planning, mitigating taxes, what it looks like on the other side of price appreciation, different types of investments, geopolitics, macroeconomics. I'm here for it all. So if you want to ask questions here on TikTok or over here on X and YouTube, then we will run them down here in the chat. So I'm probably going to hang out for about an hour tonight. Was up late with the Mavs last night. So we're just running on low sleep. So forgive me if there's any fumbles, but we'll go ahead and hop into it here. We've got the old man of XRP. He says, "Hey, Jake, sure is exciting times. I would agree, my friend. Do you think that the new administration's legislation and clarity will come fast for XRP? XRP already has clarity here in the U.S., the old man of XRP. It is one of two digital assets that have full regulatory clarity here in the U.S. as not a security. FinCEN also regulated XRP as a currency back in 2014 or 15, whenever the lawsuit with Ripple was for those sales. And so, as far as I'm concerned, and pretty much every other country on the planet, XRP in and of itself is a currency and not a security. However, I do think that stablecoin regulation could play a big role in the adoption or immediate adoption of XRP with this legislation and the new administration that's moving in. So, what happens between now and January 20th? I have no idea. I think it could be crazy to see Congress come back into session. You could get a lame duck Congress and have them just do nothing, be in opposition. Or you could have them run it down and get a lot of stuff done here at the end of the year. So excited to see which way it goes. But I do think the election in general, I think now that we're on the other side of it, is going to be very good for crypto. We saw when the results were coming out that we had a new all-time high for Bitcoin. I think we had another new all-time high for Bitcoin today, somewhere north of 76, which is a bit more than what I called. Hey, I'm here for it. I said 75 would be the top, and I was wrong. It's gone on a little bit further than that. I don't think it's going to go much further than it has. Just my personal opinion. I know I am against everyone in saying that because everybody thinks it's a foregone conclusion that we get another, another bull cycle here, and we go north of $100,000 on Bitcoin. I tend to be the contrarian on things, and I feel confident that I know some people that have taken advantage of the all-time high, cashed out a portion on their Bitcoin, and also rolled that into some other investments at this point. So will that be a good play? We will find out. I'm not here to give you financial advice, just here to talk about different things and incite some conversation. So Loyan says, "Hey, Jake, question about making a UAE company or LLC. You mentioned once a firm called Swap Global to help set up an LLC in the UAE. Do I already need my XRP in an LLC here in Europe before they can help me? Or how does it work? So you would set up the entity abroad, and then you would be able to move the assets in there. Maybe Max is trying to ping me here. Can y'all hear me? Let's see here in the chat if y'all can hear me or not. Well, I don't know. Max, ping me on Discord if you're watching. Sorry, just want to make sure that things are working right. Anyway, I'll hop back into it here. We've got. Let me know over here in the chat on TikTok. Can you guys hear me? Everything's okay over here? Give me a thumbs up or something. Oh, swipe. I can get over here in the chat. Here we go. Yeah, everybody's good. Cool. All right. Appreciate y'all. Oh, he butt dialed me. All right. I was always concerned. Max always he's got my back. He's my man on the back side of this deal. And so when he calls me, I want to make sure I'm not messing up. All right. Robbie. I didn't really finish the LLC here in the UAE. Yeah, Swap Global can definitely help you out. You definitely want to get your assets. I don't want to say, I can't give you financial advice, but the UK and anywhere that the Commonwealth governs is very rough on taxes. And so if you are going to set things up outside of that jurisdiction, it is better to do that previous to price appreciation. And Swap Global could help you do that. They have Switzerland, Nevis, Jordan, Portugal, the UAE, Singapore, pretty much anywhere on the eastern half of the world here. They're our partner and can help set things up for people there. So happy to give you that information. If you do want to email us, it's just info@digitalfamilyoffice.io, and we're happy to make that connection for you. Robbie, he says, are there any current XRP, IRA, non-IRA, 5% yield opportunities besides covered calls and puts available? If so, what are they and what needs to qualify? If not, any thoughts as to what and when? It's a good question, Robbie. Lots of contingencies here. The covered calls and puts is the only way that we can currently provide that for digital wealth partners and the clients there, and continue to hold their assets in qualified custody and not rehypothecate them. So that's the main consideration, especially for anybody managing assets. You can loan them out, but then you're beholden to the other party, right? And so we've already seen how poorly that can go with FTX and Celsius and Voyager, and the list goes on and on and on of people that have lost assets because they've trusted somebody else to use them and pay them a yield. So with covered calls and puts, the assets never leave your account. They sit there in qualified custody. You have full visibility and signing rights on them at all the time. And you don't have to worry about somebody else becoming insolvent and taking your assets as part of the consideration for their creditors. So that's what we're starting with. On the other side of some of the implementation for different amendments on the XRPL, which is what you asked about specifically, we've already got AMMs that are live. We've got digital identity. We've got oracles. I'm confident that as new liquidity providers pop up in different pairs, you're going to see, stable coins issued on the XRPL pretty much at scale here, I think in the very short term, starting with ROUSD issued by Ripple. And then once stablecoin regulations roll out, I think that may end up being the primary network that a lot of these large institutions and enterprises issue their stablecoin on. So you may be able to participate in the AMMs between XRP and that stablecoin. And I think that could be a way that you could generate a 5% yield. You are going to have to put the XRP into that pool, though, right? And so you're going to have a representation of that value that's given to you in LP tokens, which would increase in value as the mechanism within the AMM on the XRPL went to work, and they were able to harvest the arbitrage in that market. But there is opportunity for impermanent loss especially if you had significant appreciation of the XRP or one side of that AMM or liquidity pool. So that is something that's on our radar. It's something that Digital Wealth Partners is looking into. And as things become more stable, I think it is something that we may work on to provide for the clients there. Aside from that, I'm really looking forward to the amendments that are coming to pass probably middle of next year, XLS 64, 65, and 66. What that does is it allows for pseudo accounts on the XRPL. So you could basically issue a representation of the value in an account where the asset itself doesn't have to move. And you can take that and go put that in the liquidity pool or an AMM. And that's where I think a lot of what our Digital Wealth Partners is going to be looking at is how to hold the asset in qualified custody and be able to utilize that through trust lines or trade lines or pseudo accounts to provide liquidity in other ecosystems and earn some type of yield. Flare is another ecosystem that Connor Mickle, you guys may know him, you may watch his channel, is having conversations with Hugo about. Mickle's been great in like bird dogging a bunch of different developers that are working on different things on the XRPL and starting conversations with them. Because again, the majority of our clients hold significant allocations to XRP, and we do anticipate them having a liquidity event here in the not too distant future. So that's the main focus for the firm in the short term. If you do want to reach out and have a conversation in depth about your situation and what that looks like for financial advice, just go check it out. It's digitalwealthpartners.net. Hey, Todd, thank you, brother, for the super chat. He says, good evening. What are your thoughts on the Fed not following through with more rate cuts for next year? Thank you for the content. So, we got 25 basis points today. That was what the market anticipated. I posted this the other day. Things that are assumed are priced into the market. So we've already had some appreciation. We've seen, Republican win the White House, and we're still waiting on, if they're going to have the Senate and the House also Republican. I don't know how that's going to shake out. I haven't been following it today, to be honest with you, but I think we may end up with a full red House, Senate, and executive branch, which would be super bullish for crypto and passing a lot of legislation through very quickly. That wouldn't have happened if Trump had got in on the last go round when Biden was the president. So I would like to see rates hold here, to be honest with you, Todd. And the reason for that is if you do have a healthy economy and it is growing at a reasonable rate and you do have good jobs and economic growth, you can hold an interest rate at 5 or 6%. And then that incentivizes people to hold dollars in bank accounts, provide liquidity, earn a respectable yield. You can still borrow at a reasonable rate, somewhere around 8% because risk-free is going to be at 5, 6 on Treasuries, right? Right now we're at 4 on Treasuries, I think. 4 and some change. Depends on which, 2 to 10 year. I was looking at the 2-month. Somebody was making some correlate. I think it was Blockchain Backer that I was watching earlier, talking about the 2-month Treasury and its volatility and how it indicated some things. So I'm bullish on it. I'm happy to see the Fed pausing here for a period of time. I have a little bit different take on this than most people. I think if we do get an implementation of blockchain, smart contracts, AI, 3D printing, all of these other progressive technologies that could significantly reduce frictions and cost across the economy as a whole, you would see basically economic growth without having to move the economic levers like they normally do by lowering interest rates and incentivizing borrowing and leverage. You could get actual depreciation of goods and hold price stability, bring out maybe some social programs. I've talked about that before. So I'm bullish on it. I'm excited. I hope that the Fed actually is able to hold rates here. I think that if we do get the implementation of some of these other technologies, would actually be better suited for the economy long term. I'm gonna roll over here to TikTok real quick and make sure I didn't miss any questions. If you guys are here with me on TikTok, happy to. Cool. Jeffy says, is Brad's 5 trillion prediction still realistic before the end of the year? Absolutely, and I think it could be significantly more than that, depending on the events that play out. If we see a situation where stocks sell off and they have unrealized losses on the Bitcoin ETFs, and they need to be able to pull liquidity from traditional positions to cover those losses, that would be a cascading effect. It would be very bad. So if they needed real-time settlement of the stock market, you could see Project Ion, which is running in tandem, was built out by the DTCC and R3 back in 2022. Just needs enough liquidity in XRP to be able to settle all those transactions at scale. And the stock market as a whole has about 600 trillion in total value. So I don't know that we get the whole thing. Maybe it's just the Bitcoin ETFs in the beginning that move to real-time settlement so that they can unwind losses if there are some. But I think they will end up eventually tokenizing all of the stock market and private equity and a lot of assets that are illiquid, and some of the stuff we're working on. And I think 5 trillion is probably lowballing it before the end of the year here, if it's me. We've got Xavier. He says, are you working with any other crypto custody solutions outside Canada and the US where they have no jurisdiction? So Digital Wealth Partners only works with qualified custodians that are registered custodians to hold digital assets here in the US. We've had conversations with Zodia, Hex Trust, Komeinu, pretty much every custodian. We've had a conversation with them, and the infrastructure providers, Fireblocks, Copper, Medico. Really, I've done my best to make sure that we know exactly who has what and who we can work with and who's qualified and who's working on getting qualified and when that might happen. We do have a lot of international clients, and those are currently custodied in Anchorage through Digital Wealth Partners. But I think that could change, especially if Zodia does get their designation as a qualified custodian here in the U.S. They use Medico as their back-end infrastructure provided by Ripple, obviously. And that'd be great to be directly interoperable with the XRPL. Archax is another one. No Graham. Had dinner with him at Swell. Great guy. Love his team. There's a few things that they don't quite have in place over there that didn't allow us to migrate our assets from standard custody over to them. But we've continued to revisit that conversation and keep it warm. And as soon as they get some things in place, that's definitely a direction that we would like to head also. And again, Medico or Ripple Custody is their provider as well. Archax, not Archax, but Anchorage has their own inherent platform that they've developed. A lot of the space hasn't been built out yet. For those that are familiar with wealth management, a lot of RIAs or registered investment advisors partner with a TAMP or a turnkey asset management platform. And what that does is it's got a CRM built into it. It'll have all of the billing. It'll be directly interoperable with whatever custodians or partners they might use to be able to bill on their assets. You can build out SMAs in it. The only one of those that exists for digital assets is OnRamp, which was purchased by Securitize and now is Securitize for Advisors, who is our partner in that capacity. And they are directly interoperable with Coinbase, Gemini, and Anchorage at this current time. So any custodian that we do continue to add on, we would like our client not to have multiple logins or for things to be cumbersome. And so we will have to work out whatever type of integration we can with that provider to be able to view all of the assets there in one spot. So I'm rambling on here, but hopefully that answered your question around the custodians and where we're at with that. Honest Aim, appreciate you for the super chat, brother. Thank you. He said, thanks for all you do for us in the mastermind. Today, in general, was a press release from Majority Taylor Greene of Trump dismantling the deep state. Is that a real 3-minute recording? Thoughts? I think so. It looked like he was reading off of a teleprompter to me in the little bit of it that I watched. I mean, he's going to bring in Elon as director of government. Director of government efficiency. So we'll see what shakes out that direction. But yeah, I'm excited to see everything that he does while he's in office and whatever reforms he brings in. I think that it'll be good for the country. So let's see here. Oh man, Kevin's riffing it with the memberships. Appreciate you, Kevin. Lots of people here in the chat. Anything else over here on TikTok? Red Senate, and we will have Red House. Okay. Again, I haven't been watching it today, but excited to see if that does take place. Here's a good one. XRP Junkie says, hey, Jake, what would you say is the best low-risk liquid investment that earns the highest yield? Low-risk liquid investment that earns the highest yield. Treasuries, like all day long treasuries. Right now it's going to be a 2-year treasury because things are inverted. So I think you're going to be getting close to 5% on a 2-year treasury. And it's literally a tier 1 asset in the banking system designated by the BIS. You see Buffett's parked basically all of his $355 billion in treasuries. You know, he owns more than the U.S. government currently. I'm hopeful that XRP could be one of those things in the near term, especially if it got a designation as a tier 1 asset by the BIS and was a high stable price to be able to provide liquidity in AMMs and liquidity pools. But again, you know, we're going to have some of those other amendments passed on the network to be able to participate in those types of investments and ecosystems. So short answer, treasuries. Long answer, maybe XRP in the future. Let's see here. Scotty, he says, if you could only buy one crypto on Coinbase and don't sell it and just reallocate to my wallet, do I have to pay taxes on what they can't see? If I only buy crypto on Coinbase and don't sell and just relocate it to my wallet, there's no taxable event there, Scotty. Until you're swapping crypto for crypto or selling it back into fiat or a stablecoin, there's no tax implication. So if you are buying it and then moving it to a cold wallet, no problem, no taxes. That transaction is not a taxable event. Birdbrain, interesting name, says, when setting up a bank account for an LLC, do you recommend a bank that's local to where I live, or should it also have locations in Wyoming? I like international banks. Bank of America, if you don't live in Hawaii, I think is a great choice. Chase, Wells Fargo, Capital One, Mercury. We've seen people set accounts up at all of those banks and be successful with them, at least for a period of time. We did have a gentleman get his account locked at Mercury today. Well, not locked, but they said that they do periodic checks, and that because of the way he had used his account, they were going to move that. But there's hundreds of accounts there at Mercury, and that's one of them. So there may be just something that individual did specifically that warranted the removal. I don't know the full story around that. But yeah, I would look for something that has branches in Wyoming. It makes it much easier to actually set the account up and for them to find the information and connect it. Let's see here. Linners. Hey, could you provide the options of accessing, obtaining monies, leveraging digital assets, and holding company without liquidating. So yeah, we allow our clients to borrow against their assets held inside of Anchorage with third parties that we work with, Maple and Arch Lending. If that's something that interests you, I'd love to have a conversation around it. Galaxy and a few others do Bitcoin. So if it's on that side of the fence and it's not XRP, that's probably the direction we would go there. And I think we have a few other people that allow you to actually repay the loan in Bitcoin. If you did want to do that in the native asset for whatever reason, let's say you're a Bitcoin miner and you want to borrow against it for liquidity, we've created that solution as well. Man, let's see here. Boinked says, hey, Jake, what's the best way to contact your company or the best way to contact someone in Australia in regards to help in over there in the AU? You can just email us. John Basilos is a gentleman that we work with over there in Australia. The firm that he has partnership with or works for has 11 locations across Brisbane and Sydney. They're out in Perth. They're all across Australia. And so they should be able to provide you with resources to be able to establish a family trust there in Australia, move your assets in there. Again, anything under the Commonwealth, you're going to be very well served if you go ahead and take action previous to price appreciation instead of on the other side of that. So happy to make that connection. If it is meaningful, again, you just want to email us at info@digitalfamilyoffice.io. We already went through that one. Let's see over here on TikTok, just to make sure I'm not missing anybody. Appreciate you guys hopping on here. I'm going to keep doing these on both Twitter or X and YouTube, as well as TikTok. Maybe we'll get over there on Instagram eventually in the future as well. Eric D says, hey, Jake, what's up in deep pools of liquidity? The new Nostro Vostro. Yeah, so, I mean, I can run that down. Right now, the way SWIFT works and the majority of the global banking system is they have Nostro Vostro accounts. So if I've got Chase has accounts all across the world where they hold other currencies, Wells Fargo and who's the other? MoneyGram, and there's a couple other people that do it too. But there's $27 trillion locked up in Nostro Vostro accounts, and a lot of the time there's counterparty risk in holding whatever country's currency in those accounts to be able to settle into those jurisdictions. So there's cost of sitting capital there, not earning any interest, and that's why they got to charge you for wires also, because they got to make something on to offset the cost of just sitting capital there. On the other side of the adoption of digital assets, they won't have to do that, right? So won't have to hold the counterparty's currency. You basically de-risk if you wanted to settle into Turkey or Argentina or one of these other jurisdictions that has had, a significant hyperinflation of their currency to the point where that's lost most of its value. So if you're just sitting currency there holding it, you lost all that it was worth, unfortunately. That's why banks don't want to do it. I think that you'll see adoption for settlement into those jurisdictions sooner than you will for like dollar to euro. Dollar to euro is already very liquid, and so you don't really need XRP in that circumstance. You're going to want it into areas where there's low liquidity or low demand to hold another currency or country's currency. Let's see here. We already ran that one down. Apparently it got to 78K would be inflation adjusted. Cool. Everybody could hear me earlier. I'm going to go on down to the bottom here and we'll work our way back up. Chadwick. Yeah, I'm not going to broadcast your stuff on here, brother. Yeah, I trying to get a bank in Dubai. I can get you in contact with somebody. Email me, Chadwick. I've got boots on the ground over there in Dubai that's very friendly with the DIFC and the VARA and a bunch of people there. And they would have direct connections with all the qualified custodians. And then also the normal banks. HSBC would probably be who I would look at in Dubai. They were big over there. And I know that they're crypto friendly. So if I can... I'll get you in touch with one of our contacts, and he should be able to direct you to somebody there at HSBC. Teddy from Singapore. Very cool. When do you think the real flip and reveal of NDAs will take place? 2024? Yeah, I'm assuming you're talking about Ripple and their partnerships. And I don't know if it's the flip of the switch for XRP or like flipping Bitcoin. But I feel confident that it is this year in 2024. And again, just like with Bitcoin, I'll come on here and say I was wrong. If I'm wrong, I'm not afraid to state my opinions, but I'm also I'll take accountability if they don't come true. So, here we go. Katie Girl says, good to see you. Good to see you, ma'am. Do you think Japan will unwind soon? I do. We lowered interest rates today. Or do you think we don't need Japan to tip? Oh, we need Japan. Japan is the way. Japan adoption and the unwinding of the reverse carry trade is completely how the first domino that will need to move in order for XRP to see the level of utility that we all want it to. If that doesn't happen, it's just going to continue to sit where it's at 50 cents. You might see a speculative bull run. You might get a launch of the ETFs, but I think that'll coincide with Japan. We'll see if I'm right about that or not. We do have the yen continuing to depreciate against the dollar. We're back at like 154, 153. I think if we got to 155, the BOJ would step in. They're going to need to make sure that inflation doesn't ravage people there in Japan too quickly. It's moved up off of the lows, which is around 140 over the last month here. So, I mean, if you had about 10% inflation in a month, like that'd be crazy. It'd be like you go into the store and the milk is $1. Well, let's make it $5. It's $5 for milk. And you go in the next week and it's $5.50. Like, that's how much inflation Japan's seen in the last month, is about 10%, which is, it's a big move, and they've been volatile the whole time. So the BOJ really needs to get that under control. And I think the way they do that is liquidating treasuries and instating XRP. We'll see if that shakes out to be true or not. Head back down here to the bottom. Anything over here on the TikTok? Yeah, here we go. We got Kratoast. They say, can you give your 3 bullish points about XRP that'll encourage one to keep investing? Just basic things about the code that are pretty robust. One is it can't be frozen. So nobody can freeze XRP. It's the native asset to the XRPL. Issued assets can be frozen. They can also be clawed back. That's also why banks and institutions and enterprises would use the network to issue things, because you need those capabilities. You also have digital identity native to the network now that XLS 40D has been passed. And now you also have oracles that are native to the network and interoperable. So Chainlink, IOTA, the Flare Time Series Oracle, the FTSO, I think will play big roles in moving data from markets on chain so that those can exist on the XRPL for trading and other things that people want to do. The groundwork's laid. The technology is itself, the protocol, the value is in the protocol. I know that you've probably heard that from somebody else, but that's the truth. And the asset, I don't want to say is a byproduct. It's required to move value on the network. And so by proxy, if the protocol is adopted at scale, there's got to be enough liquidity in the asset to provide, the ability to settle transactions over the network for the parties that are transacting there. So those are my three. And if you wanted to talk about Ripple, or you wanted to talk about other companies, or you wanted to talk about specific use cases, but you mentioned just the asset here and the technology itself. So that is what I spoke to. Let's see here. CJ says, you're the best. Could the world and U.S. debt be tokenized on the XRPL to add value and price appreciation? It absolutely could. I just, there's a piece here that I think people get over exuberant about, and that is the tokenization for just the sake of tokenization. We see Securitize and Biddle and some of these other funds tokenizing treasuries, right? And that's great. It's good and dandy. It allows for, but they're already super liquid. Like I don't really understand the premise behind that unless you're swapping from a stable coin into a treasury. But stable coins are going to need one-to-one backing with treasuries or other dollar equivalent assets. So I don't think you're going to have tokenized treasuries and then stable coins issued against those treasuries. It doesn't make sense to me that you'd basically be doubling the value on a network. I don't think they're going to double dip like that. I don't think that that's the right way to do it. So I think it'll be one or the other. I think we'll get stable coins that have treasuries that are they're backing and auditable and held off chain, and the Oracle moves that information on, and there's an audit that shows the one-to-one peg. Or if you wanted to trade into treasuries from a tokenized fund, I think that there'll be a portion of them that get tokenized in that capacity. But that would be the tokenization of U.S. debt. I do think that there's a positive feedback loop for what you're mentioning here, though. So let's say the U.S. did move our debt on chain. That's a lot of value. But the value isn't just the debt sitting there. It is the debt moving. It's transactions happening. It's volume moving across the network is what's going to cause price appreciation for XRP. And so if you need high volume markets to move onto the network, and the debt piece interesting because you could borrow against XRP if it's a tier 1 asset and continue to buy things that were off chain and move them on chain and continue to increase the value of XRP as long as those things are transacting, right? So if you're borrowing against XRP to create technology to tokenize more stuff on the XRPL so it can be traded and transacted, you have an infinite feedback loop. It's a positive flywheel where the value of XRP continues to escalate over time, and you can continue to borrow more and more against it, and you're actually offsetting the debts that are being moved on chain if that XRP sits on the same balance sheet as those debts. So I know I probably came off a little, over the top on that one. And I'm happy to run it back and kind of break it down a little bit more if you guys are interested. Random room. Put the email in the chat. Yeah, it's just info@Digital Family Office. Let's see here. Messed it up. info@Digital Family Office.io. There you go. Let's see here. We got any more? Ain't no way XRP will perform that well. I'm excited for Render. Render is a good project. I think that a lot of the Bitcoin mining will move to AI and other applications on the other side of regulation. I'm hesitant to. I think Tether is going to be a problem for Bitcoin when they do get the sanctions, and so in anticipation of that, and also if you wanted to incentivize, building out compute and GPU for a global, at scale, large AI. I think Bitcoin would be a great way to do that. Let's see here. And come back at the end of the year if XRP isn't at some of the prices that I'm talking about. Or if it is, you show up there too. Let's see here. Nathan Valdez says, what is the minimum amount of XRP to be able to get into digital wealth partners management? 100,000 in current value, dollar denominated value. So around, what is that? Like 55 cents today. So a little less than 200,000 XRP, 187,000, something like that, would be enough to begin that process. The two qualifications that they do require is that the assets are held inside of an entity, so an LLC, an IRA, or a trust, and then that the value of those assets is currently above the $100,000 threshold, like I mentioned. And yes, we do IRAs as well. If you have it over at iTrust and you want to earn some interest on it, you want some of the other benefits that we're going to be providing our clients. You want financial advice on those assets. You can work with them on that side as well. We've got Max is reminding me here. He says, "Hey everyone, please hit the like button and share if this is something that interests you. If you think it's valuable, we like to trigger the algorithm and get it out to people, and we appreciate the share and the likes." Here's one about Velo. Oh, they've asked if you had to pick between XDC or Velo. Why? What am I doing with it? I guess I need a little more context, and I'm assuming, I'm just going to make the assumption here, and correct me if I'm wrong, you're asking about ROI or price appreciation. I think they're both great projects. I think they both have a lot of promise. I think that XDC will be adopted at a greater scale than Velo. Price appreciation, I'd probably still go with XDC over Velo. And I have no clue. Like that's just a random guess. I'm just some guy on the internet. It's not financial advice. If you want financial advice, you can go talk to Digital Wealth Partners, and they can tell you which one of those to buy and put it in your portfolio. But yeah, for me, if I was just off the cuff, I think there's a high probability that XDC would outperform Velo. Crypto Navigator, he says, Jake, are you seeing institutional investment moving millions of dollars on chain in the next 6 months? Yes. Yes, I am. We have any more over here on TikTok? Did I miss anything? Recognizable is running it up in the live over here. C. Tyler says, what are you thinking is the high for XRP by 2025? Buy. So you're going to take it as it is there. So this year, it depends. And I've said this before. If we just get a speculative bull run, garbage, maybe $2. If we get institutional adoption, if you saw the implementation or the approval of the ETFs and a crisis needed for instant settlement of the back end of the stock market, or other treasuries, SWIFT, substantially higher, potentially 3 or even 4 digits, depending on the which use case it is there. Worst case scenario on the utility side, gets 10% of SWIFT, and it might be worth $50, which is still what was 100x from current prices. And those are utility driven. And again, like I said, if it's just a speculative bull run, it's not even all time high, I don't think. Going down here in the chat, we've got Vincent J. Johnson. He says, is Japan and the back end of the stock the only 2 options for 2 digits XRP? Swift is another one. FX market, commodities, the long term, the long game for XRP is derivatives, and that'll be 5 digits once it starts settling that market. And I think that's when you're probably going to see the tier 1 designation also. I think that's probably 26, 27. If we do see, the catalysts and some adoption this year in 24, I think it could be 26 or 27 when we see a $10,000 XRP. All these things are contingent, though. Like there has to be real world events that drive these things and catalysts, and it can't just be Fugazi fairy dust that gets it there. Create 2116 says, any suggestions on custody of assets here in the US? I can't use Caleb & Brown because I'm in New York. I don't trust exchanges as an off-ramp for price appreciation, and I don't have enough to start with you guys. Ooh, you're in New York. So if you set up an LLC in Wyoming, which you can, you'd have a registered agent there that would provide an address, and you could use a VPN, and it wouldn't be wrong to do that. You could push your IP address over there to Wyoming, and coinciding with your LLC that you filed there that holds those digital assets, and then you could use Caleb & Brown if you wanted to, or almost any other exchange here in the US, including Uphold. So we provide that service. Is that, I don't like to shill the LLC on here, but it is something that we do. I believe in it. I think it's a great product that we've put together, and we make it super simple for people. It's $3,000 on our website, but for anybody here tonight, if you do want an LLC, I'm going to cut it in half for you guys. We do this for people in the mastermind. It's just going to be 50 off OFF, all capitalized, DAG, like Digital Ascension Group, DAG, LLC. So I can put it here in the chat if you guys want to go. So it'd be $1,500, but you get registered agent, EIN, articles of incorporation, letter of good standing, BOIR, templates for the operating agreement, and a step-by-step process on how to move the assets from your personal name into the LLC. And nobody else. Like any attorney would charge you at least $3,000 on that deal. So, yeah, he says open a trust. The types of trusts that you're going to be looking at for digital assets, they're going to be a bit more expensive than $3,000. I know some people might be thinking about, a living trust, which could be revocable or irrevocable in your state. You don't necessarily want to put your digital assets in that. An asset protection trust is going to provide better protections and be better over the long term than just a living trust with your digital assets in it. Living trusts are more for assets that you want to pass on to your loved ones or beneficiaries that are family heirlooms, or items or assets that you use, not things that are going to appreciate or cash flow. So gold, silver, like I said, family heirlooms, the home you live in, a vacation home, the vehicles that you drive on a regular basis, all of those things make a lot of sense to put in a living trust. Businesses, real estate, digital assets, private equity, those things are better suited for an asset protection trust. But again, trusts are just contract law. And so if you're working with a good attorney, they should be able to weave that like a tapestry, right? So if you want some provisions from a spendthrift trust and a dynasty trust and an insurance trust, and you want to weave all that into one, it's not going to be cheap to do that, but you can get a lot of those pieces strewn together in a way that's specific to you and your family. So, but like I said, an irrevocable trust in your state or a revocable trust in your state, yeah, probably comparable $3,000 to $4,000 with an attorney. But that's also somebody that's not going to be familiar with digital assets, and the documentation that they drafted likely isn't going to be specific to that use case either. He says, if you have a trust tax exempt qualified, that's the best avoidance. Okay. make sure I'm not missing anything over here on the TikTok. Appreciate you guys that are hanging out on this side with me. Neurotic Nurse says, ooh, Jake, do you see anything changing before end of year regarding the need to file the BOIR, or should I just do it already? Well, if you filed an LLC back in 2023, you have until January 1st, 2025 to file the beneficiary of intent registration with FinCEN. There is a case out. The people that are involved in that case do not have to file. Everybody else is still subject to the regulations that were passed. Now that Trump's in office, could you see that, kind of unfold? There's been some other regulation that was passed by Congress or revoked earlier this year. Psalm 121, they tried to do that one, but I'm trying to think of the other legislation that they rolled back that makes it very interesting. Anyway, I think you're probably going to have to file it, unfortunately. That's my guess. If you filed an LLC here in 2024, you're going to want to file that BOIR within 90 days of when you got that information and when it was set up. Again, people that we, do it for, we do it. We do the BOIR included. We try to do everything end to end for that $1,500. So if it's something that interests you and you think it would help you, and maybe I'll talk about that. So why would you move your assets into an LLC before price appreciation? What advantages does that give you? On the other side of price appreciation, you have the full tax code to be able to offset any capital gains or income tax that you are going to be assessed for selling the assets. So let's say you wanted to purchase a vehicle. You could utilize Section 179 of the tax code and purchase a vehicle over a weight of 6,000 pounds. You could use accelerated depreciation on that. So if you finance it, you put 20% down, you would be able to pull 60% of that depreciation forward the first year. So you didn't have to spend the money and you get the write-off, which is awesome. That's why you see a lot of soccer moms driving around in G-Wagons and like Ferrari SUVs and Lamborghini SUVs, is because, there's a $300,000 vehicle and you can write it off and pull that depreciation forward and not have to pull the full amount down. I think Trump may bring the 100% depreciation back, which was great when he was in office. You got to write off the full amount the first year. So basically, like, paying the payments and for whatever maintenance and gas on the vehicle is what you would get back on the taxes for buying it. And if you kept it for a couple years and you could just do the same thing again, it's a pretty lucrative way to mitigate taxes and set yourself up. Life insurance is really the main vehicle and driver for the LLC. So let's say you do have a big chunk of digital assets that you think is going to go sky high, but you don't want to spend $15,000, $20,000, $25,000 right now on a trust. So you move them into the LLC. On the other side of price appreciation, we can set you up a key employee insurance policy, and we can use PPLI or private placement life insurance to do that. And so you can contribute those assets in kind into the policy, working on ways to make sure that we meet the diversification requirements for that. If you did want to stay siloed in XRP for whatever reason, you could probably do it with Bitcoin right now with the ETFs that exist. You could contribute to trusts and ETFs in kind in Bitcoin. No one investment can make up more than 55% of that portfolio inside of PPLI, but it just has to be some nuances, and you could maintain exposure to the same asset just across structured products. So anyway, working on that. But you would be able to write off the full amount of the contribution. If it's a $20 million policy, you would fund it over 5 years. You could probably get, say, 10 million of it in there in the first 90 days. And that'd be the cash value that you could borrow against and write off in year one. So let's say you cashed out a portion of your assets, moving those assets in there in kind and setting up that policy and paying for it with the asset would be able to offset any capital gains you had on, whatever profit you took. And then you still get the ability to borrow against it and trade it tax free. Anyway, it's a fantastic option. And you don't get the tax benefit if it's not already in an LLC. So anyway. you have the most flexibility and the largest breadth of the tax code to be able to offset taxes on the other side of price appreciation if the assets have been moved into an LLC prior to price appreciation. You can also reset your basis this year. So I talked about this with Clinton Donnelly earlier this year in an interview. If you want to go check it out on the channel, we talked about the 1099 DA, and he felt, and I would agree with him, that you have a safe harbor period here at the end of the year in the last quarter to file that form with the IRS and basically state your basis for the tokens that you're holding. If you can point to a time in the past when you aggregated them, or there's a reference point. And so when we move the assets into an LLC, you have a time and date stamp from a notary there on the capital contributions page for that transaction happening. And so as an example, we had a gentleman not too long ago that had mined a bunch of Bitcoin early on, and he moved those assets into an LLC just a few weeks ago, maybe a week ago, when Bitcoin was around 65,000, and that's his new basis. So he didn't have to worry about crazy capital gains cashing them out. He was able to move that basis significantly higher and really reduce that tax burden when he did take some profit here in the last couple of days. So pretty cool. Vincent, thank you, brother. Appreciate you on the super chat. Rudy says, best option after digital asset appreciation for a regular Joe like me. I hate to say Digital Wealth Partners, but I built it. I built that company specific for what I wanted, the ability to borrow against my assets, earn yield on them, have it in qualified custody, get the insurance, have advisors, all that stuff, right? All the things that I knew I would want for that, I put together. And so that's the product offering in the company. And we've got great people that work over there. So for the regular Joe that has never had a ton of money before, and you want to make sure that it's structured the right way and set up, I would, have a conversation with us. I don't know anybody else out there that's doing that. So anyway, hopefully, again, I'm not trying to be salesy, but if it makes sense, we'd love to have a conversation with you. Jetpack says study 1031 exchange. Yeah, well, if that's for real estate, Jetpack, you don't get that for digital assets. There's not a 1031 exchange for digital assets. We're looking at a 1031 exchange through a 721B, where you're able to liquidate a large portfolio of real estate into a REIT, and then, you can defer, but there's still no 1031 exchange for digital assets. That's only on real estate. And yeah, you're just deferring that tax until you're not going to roll that within 6 months into another property. Yeah. It's a great method though. If you do own real estate, I highly recommend 1031 exchange. Poly. Oh geez, I'm losing my. Like I said, I didn't get much sleep last night. It's not polymath. There's another token that Gary Cardone just promoted on his channel. He's normally a BTC guy, but there's a real estate platform that does the 1031 exchange on chain, which is very interesting. Ripple backs them as well. Move the crypto to real estate for investment deference. You're still going to have the tax implications when you sell the digital assets, though, before you buy into the real estate. Now, you could have that in a Roth IRA, and Proppy, thank you. That's what I was thinking of. Appreciate you on that, main. Let's see here. Viber says, I'm ready to move my iTrust IRA over to your company. I will be in touch shortly. Really looking forward to it. Awesome, brother. Glad to hear that. Excited to be able to work with people on that and be able to generate yield on those assets in an IRA. Man. We have any more over here on TikTok before we start to wind it down tonight? Granny said you could buy XLM first then convert it to XRP from New York president. Yeah, you can do that. So BitTrue, I don't know if you're able to access BitTrue there in New York. You're still going to need a VPN to be able to do that. And again, I would just get legal and compliant and set yourself up in Wyoming and use that entity to register all of the exchanges, and then you can buy whatever you want wherever you want. Because Wyoming has the most lenient and accepting laws toward crypto in the U.S. Grab one more here, and then we'll go. This is interesting. This person's mentioned BST is another RWA gem used for tokenization of property. I'll have to check that out. I haven't seen that one. Proppy, we met with their CEO at Consensus earlier this year. She was awesome. I like the product that they built and the idea about tokenizing real estate and being able to, leverage the 1031 exchange on chain between properties in their marketplace. I think that you're going to see tokenization of real estate through syndications, Reg D funds, 506B, 506C, or SPVs, special purpose vehicles. I think that that's going to be the way that people tokenize illiquid assets in the short term, and then over time, the underlying assets themselves likely will move on chain and have an NFT issued against them for their title. This is going to be a long process because of all the paperwork that just sits in courthouses right now. Last one. Gabe says, "Hey Jake, you said digital wealth partners for the average Joe, looking for guidance, stability, yield, kind of passive income, boring management." On point, Gabe. That is what they do. That's what they've built over there, and what our vision was. And so just go check it out. It's digitalwealthpartners.net. You can set up and schedule a time with Connor or one of our other advisors, get you situated. So I think that's going to be it. Jack Jacobson over here, 24. He says, "What's your price prediction for XRP?" I went over this earlier. If we actually get utility, 3 or 4 digits. If it's just speculation, less than all-time high. So I know that's not what people want to hear, but it's the truth. So I think that's it for me tonight. Appreciate you guys. Enjoyed this, hanging out with y'all. We'll be back next Monday at our normal time, 9 Central Standard Time. We'll probably run it for a couple hours and get rocking and rolling. If you do, I didn't talk much about the mastermind, but if you guys want to check out that community, we do have almost 900 people strong over there that have an allocation to digital assets. XRPs, kind of the preference, the bread and butter over there. Talk about a lot of things that I don't discuss here. We run private deals there in that group. And if you want to check that out and get 1 month free, you can just log into mastermind.beyondbroke.com. And you can put in the code BeyondBroke, all caps, 1, the number 1, MO, like month. And it's all capitalized. And that'll get you 1 month free in there. And you can come in and check it out, Social and Carbon One. And then on the other side of price appreciation for XRP in particular, people asked me a price the other day. On the other side of $10, we're shutting down people's ability to get into that group. And we're going to make it much more stringent for the onboarding process. And we're also raising prices 10x. So if you're in now, you don't have to worry about that. You're in, and you're also grandfathered in on all the prices for all the tiers. So trying to make that as easy and accessible as we can for people, because we do feel like now that the administration has changed and Gary's on the way out, price appreciation is probably not too far around the corner. So with that, we'll go ahead and wrap it up. I hope you guys have a wonderful weekend that's coming up here. Stay safe out there. Enjoy time with your family, and we will see you guys on the next one.